Would I be the asshole if I told my husband he has to choose between me and his friend? I've been with my husband for 17 years. We have kids, a dog, and we used to own a business together. He has this friend who happens to be his little brother's ex-girlfriend. She's been in and out of our lives since she broke up with my brother-in-law over 12 years ago. Over the last 4 years or so, she's been constantly messaging my husband. She never sends me a message unless my husband tells her that he's not home and she's on her way. She's engaged and has a baby on the way. Both my husband and his friend say they have a brother-sister relationship. My kids don't like her or her child. Her child is 7 years younger than our youngest. They feel like they have to babysit her when she comes over. This is what bothers me about their relationship. I am never included in their conversations online, even when she invites herself over. My husband once told his brother that he thought she was attractive and that if he were younger and single, he would try to date her. My brother-in-law sent me a message to warn me about their relationship. When I spoke to my husband about it, he laughed it off and told me his brother was just jealous. During an intimate moment, my husband told me that she was the only person he would ever ask to do a threesome with us. This was never discussed between us before, not even the option of a threesome. When she comes over, she barely speaks directly to me. She always addresses my husband. I have to interrupt the conversation for her to even acknowledge me. I'm tired of feeling like the third wheel in their friendship. Last year, he gave me one of his old cell phones because mine had broken. He hadn't logged out of his Messenger account, so I used it to my advantage and read their messages at the time. He admitted to her that he had told his brother that she was attractive and that if he were younger and single, he would date her. He then told her I wasn't home when he said that, and I didn't know exactly what he had said. Ever since then, I feel like they both occasionally disrespect me in their conversations. All he does is talk about her, often. He never makes her wait when she texts him, yet sometimes when I text him, it takes him half an hour to respond. So tell me, would I be the asshole if I told him that he had to choose between his relationship with me and his friend? Edit. I have posted an update on my profile. Thanks to everyone for the responses. Seriously, without your encouragement, I wouldn't have had the courage to talk to him. User JM Legend said NTA. Hand him the book Not Just Friends and tell him his emotional and possibly physical affair is over. If he refuses, you'll just take half of everything in the divorce and he can choose her over his family and kids. Tell him there is no option where their friendship continues and the marriage remains intact. Remind him that his kids don't like her or her child. User Your Average Plebeian said, he'll tell you he chooses you, but he won't mean it. He's not being considerate of you in your own home. You've tried to talk about it and he's brushed it off. At this point, you need to become selfish. You have to choose yourself, whether that means gray rocking, adopting roommate behavior, pursuing a trial separation, or going straight to divorce is up to you. But he isn't going to choose you over his friend or her over you. He's going to choose his own comfort because his back isn't yet against the wall. I hope you have some form of support network to help you through this mess. Update. We've had several talks over the last few weeks. At first, he wanted to work things out. In fact, he says he never meant any of it and keeps apologizing for breaking my trust. Now, however, he's being a complete jerk. Then he flipped and decided that since I don't want to work on things, he left for his brother's house. He hasn't seen our kids in the past month. He talks to them on the phone, but that's about it. So far, to irritate me, he's cut off mine and the kids' cell phone service, so I had to get new SIM cards for us because otherwise we wouldn't have phones. He's refused to pay anything for school supplies and uniforms. He doesn't want to give me a dime. He hasn't done his taxes this year, which means I won't receive any family allowance, cutting $2,000 a month from my budget. I was able to sign the kids up for a local school supply distribution. The only thing they don't help with is the uniforms. Thankfully, only my older two need uniforms. My oldest has some old uniform shirts that will be passed down to my other child, which means my daughter will be wearing her older brother's shirts. She's really annoyed by the situation and has been giving me a lot of attitude about it, but at the moment I can't afford t-shirts at $35 each with the school's logo on them, so she has no choice. Unfortunately, uniforms are mandatory. I spoke to his friend as well. I told her everything that was going on and she blames herself for what happened. Personally, I think she was just putting on a show. I haven't spoken to her since. If you ask me, I still think she's a hypocrite. Finances are tough, I barely make ends meet. Thankfully, food banks exist because once rent is paid, I hardly have anything left over for bills and groceries. I still haven't been able to get money for a lawyer yet. I've tried taking loans, but that didn't go well. I've also tried borrowing from others, and that hasn't worked either. Now it feels like we're in a state of Cold War. He refuses to talk to me for the time being. I guess he'll come around eventually. For the kids' sake, I hope so. I feel like I'm drowning in all this mess sometimes. Edit, a lot of comments have come up on this post. I didn't expect as many responses. I've read as many as I can and will address a few points. He's gone to stay with his other brother, the second one in the family. My STBX is the oldest of 3. It's the youngest of his brothers who told me what's going on. I filed my taxes back in March. He was supposed to file his a few weeks later. At that time, everything was good between us and I listed him as my spouse because that's what we've been doing for the past 17 years since we got married. I have to file my next taxes as single. The school uniforms. My oldest kids are in high school, a public high school. Uniforms are mandatory across the school board. I've contacted the school and unfortunately, they don't have any low-cost uniforms. They suggested I look at local thrift shops. They do have an emergency budget for uniforms, but only if you have recently arrived in the country. I've contacted several lawyers. I know what my rights are. I know how much it's going to cost me to take him to court. He's quit his job, so suing him for alimony or whatever is going to be tough. I don't qualify for legal aid based on previous taxes. It takes at least 90 days of him being out of the family home for me to do anything against him. He's been gone for less than 2 weeks. As for family, I have been no contact with my parents since 2010. They do not know my younger children, nor do they care. I won't be getting into the reasons why here. His family has always been low contact with us. His parents have never liked me, and his brother who he's staying with doesn't like me either. Edit 2. For those saying that the timeline doesn't add up, I left with my 4 kids at the beginning of July to visit my elderly grandmother who doesn't live in the same province as us. It was supposed to give us breathing time to try and work things out. When I came back with the kids, he was already gone. When I was at my grandmother's, he would barely talk to me but would talk to our kids via Messenger. My trip with the kids to my grandmother's is a yearly trip. I didn't know that he would go from wanting to stay and work things out to leaving. I was blindsided by that. Edit 3, I do have a PayPal account. I'm not going to start making posts on Facebook blasting him. I'm not setting up a GoFundMe either. I don't want him finding anything out. I don't want to get charged with trying to ruin his reputation either. I don't want him to have anything to use against me in court. Final update. A lot of people have asked me for an update over the past few months, so here it is. I feel like I'm coming apart at the seams. I'm trying to hold it together as best as I can for the kids. My ex is being a complete jerk. He has yet to sign the divorce papers or pay child support. I was able to find a lawyer who would help me pro bono, but the delays are long. I was able to get back my CCTB, which is a little less than what I was already getting. In January, my lawyer will be filing so I can get child support, but with him working cash-only jobs, that might be hard to obtain. As for those who said that he would end up with her, you were all right. I hate to say it. She's posting all over Facebook about how she's so in love and how she's found the one and how she loves her blended family. Yet my ex hasn't taken the kids at all. The very few times he's seen them was to pick up his mail. Not once has he offered to take the kids or help pay for anything. Yet he and his hoe take weekend vacations with both her kids. He answers us whenever he wants to and blames me regularly because our kids don't want anything to do with him anymore. I swear my ex is trying to make my life a living hell. My life is a mess. I work 2 jobs, one full-time and the other part-time, and I'm still not making it. I'm grateful that my oldest babysits the younger kids. I don't know how I would be able to hold 2 jobs otherwise. I was able to apply for a Christmas food basket, but the organization helping me warned me that with the high demand they can only do so much. I see Christmas coming and I know I can't afford gifts for the kids. I'm at the point where I'm looking for odd jobs that I can do during my spare time. I really wish that I could offer my kids a decent Christmas. After the year we've had, I just wish that they can feel happiness again. I know for a fact that we won't be seeing much family over the holidays either, so it's not like I can depend on their help. I just wanted to say thank you to those who have been there for the kids and me. You know who you are. I've been feeling depressed lately. I know this post is all over the place, but it's at least an update. User CGM said, "Stay strong. I know it's tough and it's going to be for a while, but you'll look back and be proud of leaving a worthless man like him. It sounds like you have a good lawyer, so remember to document everything. As for their relationship, I'll be shocked if it lasts long term. The newness will wear off eventually and real life will settle in." To this, OP said, "I secretly wish that this would happen just so I can turn him down. Knowing how he is, he's not one to live alone. He'll want to get into a relationship quickly if it ends with her, especially knowing the fact that he had been single for only about 2 weeks before we started dating. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm going for full custody and child support. He could get supervised visitations. His lack of empathy has pushed me to the edge. Once I drag his sorry ass to court, he won't have anything left if I have a say in how it goes." User Remarkable Sock said, I wish the best for you and your family. Things are difficult right now, but don't worry, they will get better, and you will see that your life will be much better without him. As for him, from my experience, he might even stay with her, but after a while, he will definitely want to get back with you. It's always the same pattern. Just keep the kids away from him. This next post was made in the AIO subreddit by a user named Past Professional. The post is titled, My fiancé asked me to not wear white at our wedding. I have been with my fiancé John since high school. We dated and broke up because his mother Debbie convinced him we were too young to be in love. We broke up and went to college. During my sophomore year, we started talking on social media again. He apologized and said he missed me, and we got back together. Cue the waterworks. Debbie literally cried the first time she saw that we were back together and told John that I had done witchcraft on him. I've always respected Debbie out of respect for my mother and upbringing. I was not raised to go back and forth with my elders, but she definitely abuses that. Since John and I decided to get back together, she has tried to hook him up with women from her church, her job, and even asks her friends for their daughters to give it a shot. John denies all of them, but Debbie says that I'm controlling. John has told her to stop, but not in a way that I feel she understands. Anyway, 3 months ago, John proposed. Debbie didn't come to the engagement party. Cool. She didn't come to the family dinner we had so both sides could meet. Cool. John's dad came and apologized for his ex's behavior. I told him not to worry about it. The problems really began when John decided to confront his mother about how she's behaving toward our engagement. This turned on a light bulb in his brain, as he's always tried to ignore it and tell me to do the same. She gave him a sob story about how she got pregnant with him before marriage and never really got to have a wedding, which is triggering her. He asked her what she needed to feel comfortable, and she responded that if she wore white and I wore soft pink or lavender, she would feel comfortable. For some reason, my fiance thought this was a fair compromise. He also said that his mom could walk me down the aisle so she could get her moment in her dress. I told him absolutely not, and we got into an argument about it. I told him that it's insane that he would argue with me to defend his mom's honor, but wouldn't do the same for me. He accused me of being petty and selfish. It was bad. We both agreed to cool off, but given how heated it got, I could tell we were both close to calling it off. Now, we're in a weird space. I love John, but now see how much he lets her impact our lives. I can just imagine her sitting at home with this evil grin, knowing she's ruining my relationship with John while he's just putty in her hands. I think I should just call off the wedding. Am I the jerk, or is it just a color? User Ducky's mama said, this isn't about a dress color, it's about control and possibly a dash of humiliation. Do you really want to put down roots and start a family with a man who is willing to bend over backward for his mother to the point of telling his bride she can't wear white while his mom gets the glory? I shudder to think what having kids with this man would look like. A deleted user said, clinical psychologist with family therapy experience here. I can say this because it's anonymous. Run. Staying with him will mean a long-term war that you cannot win. Update. Hey everyone, I'm not sure if this is the update everyone wanted, but here's what happened since my last post. I laid out a couple of talking points that I couldn't articulate due to my anger. I met up with John after work at home. We spoke about everything and made plans to talk to his mother. John came home feeling remorseful. He told me he was anxious about the situation and mentioned that he had brought it up to a co-worker/friend who expressed concern about how I don't want to compromise. Apparently, his friend went off on him for being cringy. This angered me. So when I say it's a problem, it's okay, but when another man tells him, suddenly he sees the other side. I brought up my talking points. First, I addressed how easily he is manipulated. This was proven when I pointed out that he listens to whatever another man says before considering his partner's feelings. Even though his friend agreed with me, it hurt that he didn't listen to me. Next, I discussed how his mother went out of her way to break us up with this silly request. He was much more open to this theory now that he understood how cringeworthy it looked to tell someone else about our situation. I compared it to a father removing a bride's wedding garter. He got the point. I also mentioned how he agreed to his mom's outrageous request before even talking to me. He claimed he didn't. He said he told her he would see how I felt about it and then just brought it up to me. I asked why he didn't see that having his mother walk down the aisle on his wedding day was extremely creepy. He said it was just a dress in his eyes and that he didn't want his mom to miss the wedding. I told him there would be no wedding if he didn't straighten up. He said he understood. I pointed out how blatantly obvious it was that she hates me. She didn't even ask to wear white alongside me, but she acts as if I'm some impure whore by suggesting I shouldn't wear white at all. He said he didn't see it that way. He just knew she hadn't been showing up because she said seeing me in white hurts her. So I asked him if he didn't hear his own mom saying she wants to be the bride herself and can't stand it being me. It finally seemed like a light bulb went off in his head. I asked him what role she would play in our wedding, childbirth, Mother's Day, and everything else to come. Would I always come in second place? He assured me I wouldn't and acknowledged how badly he had messed up. He was just trying to keep the peace. I asked if keeping her happy meant making me miserable. I refused to live my life this way. He agreed and said he was sorry. He wouldn't want me to be miserable. We don't have children yet, but we created a plan for dealing with any major milestones moving forward. She won't be there for anything unless I'm comfortable with it, and I won't be unless she does a complete 180. I asked what his mom said to change his mind, and you all guessed it, she cried. She cried about how her baby was being taken away from her, how she never got her own wedding, how his dad left her, and she felt alone with no one else. She said she felt sick and just wanted to experience a real wedding before she dies. I told him that if that was enough to manipulate him, what's to say he won't turn on me again? He said his friend and dad talked sense into him about how he was going to lose me. I told him today was the last straw for me. He had to do 4 things to keep me engaged to him if he even cared to. Go low contact with his mom and do not let her make any decisions on our wedding, which will be postponed another year to see if he actually sticks to his word. He has to go to counseling, individually and couples counseling. He has to speak to his mom with me present about her behavior toward me because every time he goes by himself, he comes back with a reason why he left it alone. He must create strong boundaries and learn to uphold them. He agreed. Then came the bad part. I showed him the post. I felt terrible as he read everyone rip him to shreds in the comments. I could see how uncomfortable he was as he read how much of a mama's boy he was and other things about his mom. He was hurt that I agreed in some comments that I should leave. He read for a few minutes until he saw someone call him a spineless "see you next Tuesday" and then gave my phone back. He said it was really harsh, but I had to show him how crazy the situation sounded, even if it was just to keep the peace on a surface level. Him reading the post was icing on the cake. He said he saw everyone telling me to leave and his heart physically started hurting, knowing that he deserved it. We called his dad, John's dad, Dan, whom I'll name since he's a big part of this update, also read John the riot act again. He was relieved John decided to get his act together. We agreed to go to Deb's house tomorrow with Dan and John's aunt. My dad is tagging along. John has said he will tell his mother that she can't, under any circumstances, make our wedding about her. He also said if she does cry or try to guilt trip him, he will tell her he's going no contact. I feel terrible, as getting a man to stop talking to his mother isn't something I ever thought I would want. I doubt Debbie will come around, especially not tomorrow with all of us against her. I don't know if John will backtrack as soon as he gets there. I have explained that if he doesn't grow a spine, I'm leaving. He either can marry me or marry his mom, but that's my ultimatum. He said he chooses me. We'll see, I guess. This all should make me happy, but I still feel uneasy. Final update. Some people reached out to disrespect me. I honestly don't care if you don't believe my story or find me annoying, but messaging me to call me names, being disrespectful, and saying I shouldn't wear white to my own wedding is classless. I won't respond, and I genuinely hope you all get the help you need for whatever trauma makes you that angry. To all the people who have reached out with positive vibes and advice, thank you so much, you cutie patooties. Anyway, John and I met up after work and we headed to pick up Dan. John's aunt couldn't make it. My dad was meeting us there. I had really bad anxiety. I told Dan and Dad they should give us a few minutes before knocking so she doesn't feel ambushed. They agreed. Here's the part everyone was waiting for. We arrived at Debbie's house. My heart felt like I was going up the world's tallest roller coaster slowly. John was quiet. When we got there, he greeted her with a firm but respectful, "Hey mom." We sat down and John told her we came to talk to her. She asked, "What's wrong?" John got right into it. He bluntly told her that her actions toward me for years have been petty. Her not showing up for any of our wedding events was unacceptable to him. He flat out asked her why she had a problem with me. I genuinely thought he was going to start with the dress situation, but he went for the root of it all. Debbie acted like she had no idea what he was talking about. Although she has actively tried to get him to cheat on me or leave me for other women, in that moment she was shocked and claimed she didn't know where this was coming from. She said she had no problems with me and loved me like a daughter. She looked at me as if she expected me to talk, but as I mentioned before, I wanted to see what John had to say. He asked her to be honest and named all the times he recalled that she insulted me both to my face and behind my back. He mentioned that she also tells him he could do better every time I'm not around. Deb was livid. She genuinely couldn't believe he called her out like that. She started going off on him, calling him disrespectful, and saying he was disrespecting his own mother for an outsider. She kept saying, "I know she made you do this. I know she's the one making you disrespect me like this." John was trying to reason with her and get her to calm down. I texted Dan and my dad to come in. Once they were inside, Deb became a different person. She was startled because she wasn't expecting them, and then all of the things she had just said went out the window. She turned to Dan and my dad and claimed John walked in and just started yelling at her because of me. My dad looked at me and I shook my head no. Once Dan and Dad got in, everything calmed down for a little while. She went back to denying that she didn't like me. They all told her it was obvious that the dress request was shameful of her. She immediately replied that it was shameful that I wouldn't let her son spend time with her. John said that wasn't true. At this point, I was burning inside. I wanted to correct all of her inaccuracies, but I remained quiet. John asked her what the real issue with me was. Deb started saying how she knew I was going to be an issue since we were in high school. She claimed that once John got with me, his grades started dropping and he stopped making time for family. She said he once didn't show up to celebrate Mother's Day with her a few times because of my birthday. She claimed that once we got back together, he forgot about her completely because I made him abandon her. She said the fact that we had the engagement party without checking how she felt about it was wrong and all the evidence she needed to see what kind of woman I am. My dad pointed out that she didn't pay for the engagement dinner, so she had no input on it. Dan asked her what she was thinking, asking to wear white at our wedding and why she was so hungry for attention. Her face turned red and she went off. She told Dan that maybe if he had properly married her and given her a real wedding, she wouldn't feel left out. Dan straight up called bullshit and said that she didn't want to have a real wedding, even though he tried to convince her. The reason was that her mother told her pregnant brides are tacky. She started crying. My dad got everyone to calm down. John finally spoke again and told his mom that he can't keep defending her when she won't even try to respect me. For his sanity and our relationship, he's going low contact. Deb kept crying and said that John can't leave her for dead. She's the only mother he'll ever have. Mothers are forever, wives are not. She claimed I'm not even his wife yet, and I'm already tearing apart the family. He kept going. He told her that we are going to get married. If she can't respect me or stop crossing boundaries, she'll get cut off completely. His visits are dropping to once every 2 weeks and she needs to call less. She started going off. She knew it. I'm doing something to him. What did I do to her son? She called me a manipulator and a problem. She told my dad he raised a demon. My dad shot back at her to watch her mouth, but she kept screaming and then started hyperventilating. She was gripping John's arm, saying she couldn't breathe. This was when I said to myself, oh no, he's about to flip-flop. He looked at me and I knew he knew what I was thinking. John got her a cup of water, then asked his dad to make sure his mom was okay and asked my dad to take Dan home. Dan and Dad agreed and his mom started crying louder. She literally screamed, "I can't breathe," as we walked out so he could hear her. I felt terrible and finally spoke. I told John I was sorry and understood if he felt bad. He said he knew she was faking it, but his instincts wanted to run over and make sure she was okay. I asked if he was okay and he said no, but looked really sad about it. My dad walked out behind us. He has never seen this side of Deb, and neither have I. She's always been catty or shady toward me, but this was insane. My dad straight up told John that his mom needed help with her mental health. John said he was going to talk to his aunt about getting her help. We went home and John cried. He said he cried because he watched his mom villainize him and tell others that he just walked in and verbally abused her. He said it reminded him of the times he would fight with his dad because his mom would say Dan would just come home from work and yell at her for no reason. I guess it was deja vu for him. He was silent after she said that, so I believe it struck a nerve with him. He decided to go no contact for now. Before we went to Deb's house, I called a couple of counselors in our area to check availability, and our first couples therapy session is next month. It's a little while away. He called his provider today to check for a therapist within his insurance and got an appointment for himself on the 23rd. The ball is rolling and John seems like he's on the same page as me. I know this is killing him though. Dan called us and let us know he got Deb to calm down. He said he spoke to her as best as he could about how she was harming her own relationship with John, but she didn't want to hear it. Thank you, Reddit. I really didn't expect this to blow up like it did. The advice and well wishes I received were overwhelming in a great way. While I should be happy, something about it all just makes me feel down. I hope that Debbie gets better and that we can one day have her in our lives. Something about that comment regarding her mother made me hurt for little Debbie. Hopefully one day I'll get to hear her stories. Now I'm going back to my regular life and hopefully I won't ever have a dramatic update for you guys again. This last post was made in the AITAH subreddit by a user named Commercial Tone. The post is titled AITAH for leaving my Bumble date stranded at a restaurant after she admitted she was going to her guy best friend's place after the date. A couple of months ago, I matched with Anna on Bumble. I thought we vibed really well. She had a nice and funny demeanor, and we had lots of engaging conversations on FaceTime. We set up our first dinner date last week. I proposed a really nice restaurant that was somewhat far from where we lived, but I really wanted to treat Anna because I thought she was special. Anna asked if I could pick her up and then drop her off at her best friend's place after the date. I didn't mind at all. Anna mentioned she had a movie night with her best friend. I picked Anna up and we went to the restaurant. The date went better than expected. We vibed really well. Anna also had drinks since I was the designated driver. However, right at the end of the date, Anna asked if I would drop her off at Josh's. I was initially confused and then realized that Josh was her guy best friend. Anna instantly recognized what she had said and it became awkward. She apologized and I told her there was no reason to apologize. I was just curious about who Josh was, so I asked Anna and she explained that he was her guy best friend and that they occasionally have movie nights together. Anna said she wanted to be honest with me because she really liked me and saw a future with me. She admitted that they sometimes make out during these movie nights, but it doesn't go further than that. I appreciated Anna's honesty, but this whole situation felt like a huge gut punch. I may have been emotional, but I just couldn't continue. I told Anna to ask Josh to pick her up instead, paid for my portion of the dinner, and left. Anna looked really sad when I ended the date and walked away. Later, I felt guilty about it and called my sister to ask if what I had done was right. My sister said I shouldn't have left Anna stranded at the restaurant, especially after she had been so sweet and honest with me. I explained to my sister how I could be expected to take Anna out for a fancy dinner and then drop her off at her guy best friend's house where she would then make out with him. I still had enough self-respect not to do that. Update. I appreciate all the comments and different opinions on my previous post. However, at the end of the day, the reason I posted it was that I felt guilty about what I did and I agreed more with the comments stating that what I did was wrong. My sister has never once given me bad advice in life and I think her assessment was right this time too. Since I left Anna at the restaurant last week, she texted me a couple of times, but I just ignored those messages. A couple of hours ago, I opened the messages and was somewhat surprised. Instead of lashing out at me, she apologized again and said she was willing to stop seeing Josh if it meant we could continue our relationship. She mentioned that after the dinner, she took an Uber back home and didn't go to Josh's. I texted Anna that there was no reason to apologize and that I shouldn't have left her stranded at the restaurant. I also should have paid for her meal since I was the one who invited her to the expensive restaurant. I asked Anna for her Venmo, but she said she didn't care about the money and asked if we could continue our relationship. However, I didn't have the same feelings for Anna anymore, so I texted her up front that I didn't think we were compatible and that I didn't want to continue this. We chatted a bit more and Anna was very respectful of my decision but admitted she was sad. I also acknowledged that it was tough, but it's best for everyone that this doesn't continue further. That was the final text, and I definitely think there are valuable lessons learned from this entire experience. Thank you all for your input. User Huge Ad said the problem was matching a couple of months ago and then not setting up a first date until last week. That's how you end up building the other person up in your head through texts and FaceTimes, getting way too fancy of a date for someone you've never even met, and then feeling a lot more committed than you actually are. If you meet through an app, move to face as soon as possible. User Screechy Pete said, either she's going to learn from this and stop seeing other guys when she starts catching feelings for someone, or this will result in her hiding it from the next guy better. I hope it's the first one, but it could go either way. Sometimes I don't have a lot of faith in humanity. I slept with my wife's best friend after she cheated on me. I got married to my wife when we were both 20, despite people warning me not to get married so young. Let me go back a little. I started an advertising firm during college and it took off big before I could graduate. I made a comfortable amount of money, which I invested smartly. I own a pretty decent apartment, 2 cars, and 4 motorcycles that I like to work on. I met my then girlfriend in college. We weren't the special kind of couple everyone talks about. I'm not particularly attractive, nor was I great at academics or sports. She was at the top of her class and played volleyball, but wasn't much into guys. However, we enjoyed eating out together, going to movies, long rides, just the usual couple stuff. After college, I bought my apartment. I saved up and bought a big diamond for my special lady and proposed to her. It was quite special. We got married in Goa, India. It was cute, but nothing extravagant, just a few friends and family. For the last couple of years, everything seemed to be running smoothly. We went on vacation 4 to 5 times a year, dined out often, and I made sure to get her flowers regularly. Things were going well, or so I thought. Last November, I threw her a grand birthday party and offered her the chance to retire from working permanently because I wanted us to try for a baby. She jumped at the offer and said, "I thought you'd never ask." We were overjoyed and tried multiple times but failed to conceive. By February, my wife seemed fairly stressed about this and it started straining our relationship. I care deeply for my wife and she has 2 best friends who have been with her since childhood. Let's call them Gwen and Stacy. To help her relax, I offered to pay for an all-expenses-paid vacation for her and her 2 best friends to the hills. One thing to note, both my wife and I were very much against all forms of addiction. We didn't drink or smoke or anything like that. She even helped me quit smoking when we first got together. 4 days into their trip, Gwen showed up at my office unexpectedly and told me that Stacy had tried to buy weed but got busted. All 3 of them were arrested locally and spent the night in jail. Gwen begged me to bail them out. Scared out of my mind, I flew there immediately and bailed them out. When we got home, I was disappointed in my wife, but didn't think this incident would ruin our relationship. However, after we returned home, she completely stopped talking to me, just gave me the silent treatment without explanation. In early May, Gwen texted me asking to meet up because she had something important to tell me. We met at a public cafe because I thought she might give me some insight into why my wife was acting this way. That's when Gwen dropped the bombshell. During their trip, my wife and Stacy picked up a local guy, the same guy they tried to buy weed from, and had an unprotected threesome with him while Gwen was forced to record it on video. The guy even finished inside my wife. Gwen showed me the video as proof. My world came crashing down in that moment. I cried loudly right there in the cafe until we got kicked out. Gwen apologized for keeping this from me and said she'd support me if I decided to fight for divorce. I was too distraught to drive home, so Gwen drove me to a spare apartment in my office building that I keep for employees pulling all-nighters. On the way there, we stopped at a store where I picked up 2 bottles of whiskey, the prettiest bottles I could find since I hadn't drunk in so long that I didn't even remember what was good anymore. Back at the apartment, Gwen stayed with me while I drank heavily and cried for hours. By around 8 p.m., my body felt like liquid. I had thrown up twice in the kitchen sink, but kept drinking straight whiskey because there was no ice or mixer. I hated myself for ignoring all the warnings people gave me about marrying too young. My parents got married at 21 and their marriage worked out perfectly. My dad always told me that if you're sure it's going to work out, you should trust yourself and take the leap. But now it feels like I made the biggest mistake of my life. That's why I got married. My mom didn't want me to marry so early, but I didn't know who to trust or what to believe at the time. My thoughts were too jumbled to make a sane decision. After learning about my wife's betrayal, I went through grief, denial, more grief, and then landed on anger. In a drunken rage, I smashed one of the whiskey bottles. Then I turned to Gwen and angrily asked if she thought I was attractive. She was visibly shaken by the broken bottle, but I was too angry to care. She nodded silently. I then asked her where I went wrong. What did I do that made my wife decide to betray me like this? Gwen broke into sobs and said something that hit me hard. If you'd have given me the world like you did for her, I'd never screw you over like this. Her words struck me in a moment of defeat and shame, but they also stroked my bruised ego. Gwen then confessed that she used to have a crush on me back in college before I started dating my wife. She said she had tried hitting on me back then, but since I never reciprocated, she gave up. When I started dating her best friend, she admitted she was always jealous. In my drunken state, my brain whispered, "You could have chosen this instead, you idiot." I told Gwen she could have it all, and collapsed onto the couch. The next thing I remember is Gwen getting on top of me and we ended up having sex. Afterward, I passed out completely. The next morning, I woke up naked on the couch when my cleaner came in. The room reeked of puke and alcohol. Embarrassed, I asked her for some spare pants and a shirt, paid her extra for cleaning up the mess, and apologized profusely. She's an older lady with a son around my age, so she just shook her head sympathetically and got to work. I left for home barefoot because my shoes were still at the office building. Driving a manual car without shoes is no joke, especially mine, which has a clutch pedal that feels like an axe blade. By the time I got home, my foot was bleeding. When I arrived home, the door was unlocked. Inside, I found divorce papers sitting on the table. Panicked, I called my wife repeatedly, probably over 100 times, but her number was inaccessible. I drove straight to my parents' house and told them everything that had happened. My dad immediately called his lawyer while my mom cried quietly in the background. My dad also called my father-in-law to ask about my wife's whereabouts. At first, their conversation seemed normal, but then my dad started shouting on the phone before cursing and storming back into the room. He turned to me with a stern expression and asked, "Have you ever laid a single finger on your wife in a violent manner? If yes, you'd better not lie to me." The question shocked me, and then it hit me. My wife was likely planning to frame me for domestic violence as part of her divorce strategy. I just shook my head silently in response to his question. My mom spoke up for the first time and asked gently, "Did you?" Again, I shook my head from side to side. They both looked visibly upset, but relieved at the same time. My dad hugged me tightly and said he trusted me and would support me through this because he believed in me, even though he now regretted agreeing to let me marry so young. The lawyer arrived within an hour. He asked me to explain everything that had happened in detail. While I told him most of it, I left out the part about what happened with Gwen. I was too embarrassed to admit it in front of my parents and already deeply regretted stooping to that level. The lawyer reviewed the divorce papers and informed us that my wife was demanding everything. My apartment, both cars, all 4 motorcycles, and even for my business to be liquidated and handed over as part of the settlement. He assured us he would fight it, but said we needed strong evidence, specifically the video Gwen had shown me of my wife cheating, to have any chance of winning in court. I excused myself to another room and called Gwen. The first call rang out without an answer, so I called again. This time, she picked up. She sounded bubbly and cheerful. There was giggling in the background, and greeted me with, "Oh, you're awake? I hope you're feeling okay now, baby," in a tone that felt almost condescending. I told her firmly that what happened between us wasn't a sober decision and that it shouldn't happen again. Then I asked her if she could send me the video of my wife cheating because I needed it as legal proof for the divorce. Her tone immediately changed as she replied, "Your wife cheating? What? Don't pretend like you don't want me, baby. You're the one having an affair on your wife. Why are you blaming your poor wife like that?" I was confused and asked her what she meant. She told me she was going to testify in court if needed during the divorce. I trusted her. Then she giggled and hung up. I tried to call her again, but it just rang, and after 3 or 4 attempts, the line started saying it was busy. I went back out and said I wanted to add something I might not have mentioned before. I told my lawyer and my parents about my encounter with Gwen and the call I just had. My lawyer looked terrified and my parents were shocked. My mother told me she was very disappointed in me, which hurt, but I knew I was to blame for that. I also learned that there was a police report accusing me of domestic violence and marital rape. Thankfully, it was ruled out due to lack of evidence and a mismatch of timelines by the police, so I wasn't arrested. The first day of civil court dismissed all counts of domestic violence and marital rape from my case, but ruled in favor of my wife for infidelity on my part. As it turns out, Gwen not only slept with me that night, but also took photos while doing so. The photos were displayed on a projector screen, only partially blurred to cover Gwen's and my privates. My lawyer argued that I was clearly inebriated in the photos, but my wife's attorney countered that Gwen was underage and that by drinking in a room with her, I was exposing her to alcohol. Gwen also testified that I had been having an affair with her since the time of my marriage to my wife. She claimed that I often took time off during afternoons to meet Gwen in her apartment, and that at times I brought along other women. More often than not, there were more than 2 people in the room. I sat there for 30 minutes as my name was dragged through the mud, unable to counter any of the accusations. My lawyer denied all claims against me and moved for a defamation case, which the judge noted, scheduling a new date for the presentation of valid evidence. Well, that day is today. I'm currently in the courtroom waiting area writing this, and I know I'm going to lose the case because we couldn't find any evidence to support our side. Also, my wife is pregnant, not with my child, and she made that clear. They have an IVF consent form with my fingerprints on it, stating that I consented to my wife having IVF with sperm from a sperm donor. My lawyer plans to argue that fingerprints are not valid proof of agreement for literate citizens and that a signature is mandatory. He claims the fingerprint was forged onto the consent form while I was inebriated with Gwen. However, both my lawyer and I know it's unlikely to hold up in court. We're just telling ourselves it will work to keep from losing our heads. My father has been completely losing it. He's pacing the corridor, trying to sneak into the courtroom to see if the judge has arrived yet. My mother has been shifting between grief and disappointment. She's wiped her tears 16 times already as I've written this over the last 10 minutes while sitting on the waiting bench opposite her. We don't know what the outcome of this hearing will be, but I think it's going to be the last one. It was scheduled early this morning because it would take time. I hope it gets resolved today. I'm tired. I've been a mess for the last 2 weeks and have no idea what is going to happen. Thankfully, over the last 3 years, I've spoiled my parents with the money I've made and they've spent very little of it. They have kept it all in savings accounts and safe stocks. They said they'd be happy to give that back so I could get back on my feet. I guess we've all lost hope of saving any of my assets at this point. This next post was made by a throwaway account in the same subreddit. The post is titled, "My sister is infertile and I'm glad. I have an older sister, Angela, whom I have never liked. She always felt the need to compete with me, but not in a normal sibling rivalry way. Throughout our lives, she seemed resentful of my existence, as if the spotlight couldn't shine on her while I was around. She would step on everything I enjoyed. For example, if I learned piano, she had to learn piano too. If I excelled at a subject, she suddenly became a scholar in it. If I told my mom I had a crush, Angela would be dating that boy within a week. I would tell my parents when she did this, but I was disregarded because sisters copy each other, and I couldn't gatekeep what she likes. Angela always monitored what activities I participated in and the clothes I wore so she could outdo me. If I wore a flannel shirt, Angela would come to school in an all-flannel dress. There was also more praise directed at Angela even if I was the one who initiated an activity first. She received recognition because she was better at it. My parents would miss work to attend her dance recitals, going to every single one, because the world would stop if they missed it. In contrast, I remember maybe 2 of my own recitals they attended because they were stuck at work or otherwise preoccupied. Angela reveled in this attention. She would make comments under her breath around our parents. Whenever they weren't around, she'd tell me how much she hated me and that I should stop trying because I would always come second to her. She also physically bullied me at school. Angela would purposely trip me, throw things at me, and hit me in the hallways nearly every day. The school got involved multiple times, threatening Angela with suspension, but my parents fought it every time. They repeatedly told the administration that this was a family matter and that we were just bickering like normal sisters. Angela was never reprimanded by either parent. Once, when Angela was caught impaling a cat on the school fence, my parents still defended her, claiming it was normal teenage behavior. I often ended up in trouble because Angela would start crying and say how she was being targeted by the school when I had supposedly antagonized her. After one of these occasions, Angela cut and bruised herself to prove to Dad that I was the aggressor. I became a pariah due to Angela's malicious rumors about me, making it difficult for me to make friends. I ended up only befriending people from other districts. Eventually, Angela ensured that I had nobody by stalking my friends, befriending them, and telling them lies about how I was favored by our parents and constantly bullied and belittled her. She even stole boyfriends from me by convincing them that I was horribly mean and an awful person who copied her every move. Once, she catfished me on MySpace for 4 months and baited me into sending her nudes, which she then sent to my parents and everyone at school, including teachers. Later on, she told one of the boys I liked that those pictures were actually hers and that I had catfished her. On the day of my high school graduation, my mom sat me down and told me that Angela had revealed the horrid abuse she claimed to have suffered at my hands and that I was no longer welcome in their home. After moving out the next day, my parents made very few attempts to communicate with me, only the occasional holiday or birthday text. All financial support abruptly ended as soon as I stepped foot on campus. I met my now husband shortly after being estranged from my family, and we were married within a year. My parents didn't feel inclined to attend our wedding or even congratulate me. When I had my first child 8 years ago, I informed them as an olive branch, hoping it might open the door to reconciliation. However, they made no attempt to contact me or meet any of my 3 children. As for Angela, the best I know of her now, based on what I've heard, is that she married one of the boyfriends she stole from me in high school. She's been posting online about her infertility struggles and how she can't give my parents their first grandbaby. After years of silence, I received a text from my mother at 8 this morning. Here's what it said. "Hey X, it's me, your mama. We haven't talked in a while and I surely miss you terribly. I wanted to let you know your sister just had a miscarriage earlier this week. Angie and Justin are struggling a lot right now. Send something a little sweet her way. I'm sure she'd appreciate it. Get back to me. I love you. I hate to say it, but I'm glad she's suffering. I'm glad she doesn't get to be a mother. If she tormented me for years, what would she do to a child, especially a girl? While I don't wish death on any baby, I know in my heart that her child would have been damaged by her narcissism and cruelty. I'm angry at my parents for expecting me to have any sense of obligation toward her. I don't even feel any obligation toward them. They always believed her lies and dismissed me as the problem child. It's strange how warm my mother can suddenly be when asking me to do something for Angela, and the fact that they care more about Angela's now deceased fetus than they ever cared about my actual children who wonder why they only have one set of grandparents makes me furious. I feel some guilt for thinking this way, but I refuse to offer condolences to my destructive, narcissistic sister who has been justified in her bad behavior since birth. Maybe this experience will change her, help her develop empathy or any emotion other than hate and vindictiveness. If that happens, I'd be more than willing to offer support. But until then, I feel nothing but a small sense of satisfaction that she's hurting. Am I awful for feeling this way? Update. I wanted to sincerely thank all of you for the comments, awards, and personal messages I've received. I feel very emotional knowing that my account of my childhood is finally being believed and met with warmth and support. It's been hard for me to talk about as many people believe I'm being disingenuous or overdramatic. I understand that it's difficult to believe, so truly, thank you all from the bottom of my heart. I decided not to respond to my mother. I blocked both of my parents, thinking it would end there, but when does it ever? On Wednesday morning, my messenger was flooded with texts from my parents' siblings. Most of the messages consisted of them telling me that I need to answer my mother's calls and how callous I was being. I proceeded to block all of them as well. My cousin heard this from her younger sister, who is often around my parents and Angela for family dinners. I don't know if I can post the screenshot, so I'll type out the messages. Angela kept calling an abusive ingrate because she wouldn't talk to Aunt Kathy. Aunt Kathy said they need to start inviting to family stuff, so she comes around to being a surrogate. It got weird real quick because Angela said she wants to use sperm so her kid is tall and has blue eyes. Then Kathy was saying how they just need to be around her for like a year, then they can cut her off again or whatever. Angela kept saying is the only way she can have kids because she doesn't want to raise someone's trash baby. Reading those messages made me want to hurl. Do they think my uterus is some kind of fish hatchery that can be bought with kind words and casseroles? It's nice to know Angela is too much of a narcissistic ass to adopt though. I'm officially done with every single one of them. If they try to come around me, I will get a restraining order before they can even darken my doorstep. Between the weak conspiracy they've concocted to try to use me like a baby bargain bin and the nasty words they continue to speak about me, I will no longer claim to have a family outside of the one I've created. I'm sorry if this is difficult to read, but going over those messages again just got me so worked up. But you all finally got the update you asked for, so that's the silver lining in this, I guess. Anyway, thank you again. User Qualified Apathetic said she literally got caught murdering a cat and the parents didn't realize they had a potential serial killer on their hands. There is absolutely nothing she can do or say to make them understand what she truly is. All OP can do is forget about them. They will never understand how horrible they were to her, nor will they care. User Yarn and Metal said, I'm also very glad that OP's sister is infertile. The family backed the wrong pony and it shows. It's honestly hilarious. If they had wanted grandchildren, all they had to do was not be complete jerks, but apparently that was too much for them. This final post was also made in the True Off My Chest subreddit by a user named Weenie Button. The post is titled, My Dad is Having an Affair with a 29-year-old Woman. Today I experienced the definition of mess around and find out. Some backstory. Almost a year ago, my family lost my grandpa, my dad's father. It was sudden and it struck my father really hard. He started having more emotional outbursts and became more reclusive. We tried our best to be understanding and help him in any way he needed. He found a therapist and seemed to be working through a lot of his feelings and thoughts. While he still wasn't acting entirely like the dad we once knew, death affects everyone differently, so we excused his behavior. My dad and I don't live in the same city, so we often meet up at halfway points for lunch. We have always been close, so it's common for us to talk about our feelings, emotions, and recent life events. Now the story, During our first lunch since my grandpa's passing, I noticed my dad talking a lot about this new girl at his work. We'll call her Stacy. He said that Stacy was helping him a lot with his trauma and was there for him. Stacy's husband had been through some similar traumas that my dad had experienced, which was being discussed in therapy, so he mentioned that she offered him support. He really felt he could be himself around her. He made it abundantly clear that he did not feel he could be himself around his wife of 20 years, but that he could with Stacy. I thought this was an odd comment to make, and I think this is where my suspicions about their real intentions began. Still, knowing he was struggling made me feel relieved that he had someone he trusted. It struck me as a little weird that she was 29, but sometimes workplaces can create unexpected friendships. Since I'm 26, I wondered if maybe he saw her as another daughter since I wasn't able to be around much due to the distance. He assured me that Stacy was married to a man named Andrew and that they were strictly friends. However, in his own words, people at work had started to think something was going on between them, so they had stopped talking at work and moved to texting. He even went so far as to say later in the conversation that he thinks a strong marriage should be able to survive someone cheating. I assured him that wasn't healthy and expressed my uncertainty about what kind of relationship he wanted with my mom, but I did not want a relationship founded on infidelity. Obviously, alarm bells were going off in my head. With the little information I had on Stacy, I went online to look her up. Just as my dad said, she appeared to be in a happy marriage with Andrew. She kept her social media pretty private, but from what I could see, she looked like your average 29-year-old woman. I couldn't imagine what she would want with my dad. If anything, I thought maybe my dad had developed a work crush that he was reading too much into. No one wants to think their dad could be capable of a full-blown affair. Over the next few visits with my dad, I noticed him continually talking about Stacy when telling stories about work or discussing his friends. She always seemed to come up. I couldn't help but notice that he would avoid calling her by name. She would just be referred to as she, her, or the girl from work. It was as if he completely forgot the things he had told me about her or was afraid to say her name around me. Infidelity was never mentioned again, but he always talked about how he was fighting with my mom. He claimed that as he went through therapy, she might not like the man he's becoming. He told me how he was standing his ground and getting into verbal arguments with her. I imagined this was self-sabotage due to his guilt over the potential cheating. Fast forward to today, about a year since I first heard about Stacy, I went on my laptop and opened Instagram. I realized I still had my dad's login credentials saved on my computer from a one-off back in 2016. My dad has always been sketchy with his passwords, so I assumed it probably wouldn't work, but I tried logging in anyway. To my surprise, I was in. I won't pretend that I didn't know exactly what I was looking for or that I'm above looking through his DMs. This is also where I fucked around and found out. I opened their DMs, which were pretty bleak at first. I thought I could rest my suspicions until I couldn't anymore. It started with them sending corny photos to each other, things like, "You can kiss me whenever you want," "I'm yours," and "Your arms feel like home," and "I'm homesick." Really juvenile, weird shit. Things I wouldn't send to a coworker even if you paid me. Still in denial, I kept scrolling and that's when I saw it. Nudes, full-blown sexting conversations, discussions about their existing partners, and the potential of leaving them for each other. There were I love yous and plans to sleep together for the first time, etc. You get the picture. All of my suspicions laid out in front of me. He was willing to risk it all for a married woman 3 years older than his daughter. He was willing to hurt the woman he had supposedly loved for 20 years and destroy both families for what? Absolute selfishness. The worst part for me was that they actively talked about their existing partners in this chat. Stacy often made fun of my mom, asking things like, "Does Lily wear lacy bras for you?" and "Does Lily let you go down on her with her bush?" As if Stacy couldn't be a more disgusting human being. She's already sleeping with a married 53-year-old father of 2, and yet she has to degrade his wife, an innocent victim in this situation. They assure each other that they love their current partners so much that it hurts, and they don't understand how they can have the capacity to love 2 people at the same time. It's disgusting and childish. I don't know how this ends. They still work closely together. I cannot bring myself to tell my mom. I don't want my dad to know that I know. I don't want him to feel backed into a corner as if he has to tell her. I want him to tell her because he knows it's the right thing to do. I have looked up to my dad my whole life, and now it feels like the image I had of him as this selfless, loving family man has been shattered. I'm so disappointed in his actions and I don't know what to do. It's eating away at me. User Theophania said, I mean, you said it yourself. Your mom is an innocent victim. You found out that your dad is cheating and now you don't know how to tell your mom that her husband is being unfaithful and allowing another woman to talk badly about her. Honestly, that's messed up. You say it's not your responsibility, but by not saying anything, you're just keeping your dad's secret. He needs to know he messed up and should feel like a piece of crap for what he's done. If I were in your position, I would seriously consider being petty and finding a way to get in touch with Stacy's husband. I would send him screenshots of her conversations with your dad. If you don't tell your mom, that's just completely wrong, period. User Red Author said, I'm so sorry for your mom. Her partner of 2 decades is lying to her face while sleeping with a woman young enough to be his daughter. Your mother will be devastated, and the fact that your dad and his affair partner are bad-mouthing her only makes it worse. You need to tell your mom. Wouldn't you want to know if your partner was cheating on you? If I were you, I would tell my mom and send screenshots of their saucy chats to the affair partner's husband. Let the cheaters burn in the mess they created. Usership Wrong said, please tell your mom that your dad is cheating on her so she can make her own decision. Also, try to send a message to Stacy's husband about their affair. He deserves to know too. Don't believe that you are responsible for breaking up the family. Remember, it's your dad's fault, not yours. Update. So I finally called my mom. She and my dad had spent the day together at their cottage, so I waited until they were home and then asked if she could go somewhere alone so we could talk on the phone. Her reaction was nothing like I imagined. She sounded like she already knew. Her response also made me feel like this wasn't the first time this had happened. She laughed and asked me what I thought I saw. She blamed herself and said that she doesn't meet my dad's needs. I explained to her that that's not fair and that she doesn't deserve to be lied to, cheated on, or put at risk for STDs. I said the way they spoke about my mom in the chat was disgusting and that this was wrong. She asked to see the screenshots, so I sent them to her. She kept reassuring me that she and my dad were in it for the long haul and wouldn't divorce. I told her I didn't care about that. I said that no matter her decision, I supported her either way. Even though it wasn't what I was anticipating, I felt relieved. It felt like a weight had been lifted. She thanked me for telling her and said that I would always be her sweet girl. Everything seemed to be going well until she spoke to my dad and called me back. I don't know what happened during the conversation between her and my dad, but it's clear that he is a master manipulator and not at all the person I thought he was prior to all this. My mom's tone had completely shifted on the phone. She was scolding me. He confirmed the affair. He confirmed everything I had said and brought forward to her. Somehow, they're blaming me. They're telling me I'm wrong. My mom told me that she's read all the screenshots I sent but had nothing to say about them. They're staying together and in her words, this is just a bump in the road. They've had highs and lows and they'll have lows again. I said I would support her either way, so I can't be mad, but I can't help but feel sad about how low she thinks of herself to accept this behavior. I love your dad and he loves me. What a horrible message to send to your child. She told me that guilt does bad things to people and that she thinks I got myself worked up over nothing. She told me it was wrong of me to look at his Instagram messages and that it was a breach of trust. Ironic considering my dad committed the biggest breach of trust there is in a marriage. I also never would have looked at his messages had he not planted this seed of infidelity in my brain. She explained that my dad is very angry with me and that she doesn't know if our relationship is repairable. I assumed my dad would be mad at me, of course, but for my mom to seemingly side with him and turn her back on me too is almost too much to take. I know she's being manipulated, but this is where it ends, I guess. I can't stand to look at either of them. I feel like I was just orphaned. I can't fight a fight someone doesn't want me to on their behalf. Deep down, I know I'm not to blame for this, don't get me wrong, but it's really hard not to feel awful when your parents, whom you've trusted, turn their back on you. I do feel like I did right by myself in telling my mom the truth, but I can't help but think that everything would have been easier if I had never said anything. My dad still follows Stacy. He has blocked me and my fiance on all social media platforms. He's quite literally showing that he chooses his affair partner over his daughter. I know he's reacting out of embarrassment and anger, but I've blocked him in return. He doesn't get to choose when he comes back into my life. All of this hurts a lot.